Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show here on New Zealand Sport Radio. Hi, I'm Paul. I'm your host this evening, and joining me in about 10 minutes or so will be Boa. So don't worry, it's not just going to be my voice for the next however long. There will be two of us chatting about it, about rugby this evening. So what are we going to talk about? Well, obviously, we're in international season. So we're talking predominantly about the All Blacks. We'll have a look back at... We'll have a chat about the USA game. We'll also look forward to the Wales game. Also, we'll have a chat about the Fijian Drua as they have listed a whole bunch of players today. I'll probably talk with Boa about Moana Pasifika as well, just to catch up with him on his thoughts as to how they have been going with their squad as well. On that one. Good evening, Simon, in the live chat. Don't forget, folks, yes, we go live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can put live comments in Facebook and YouTube. On Twitter, unfortunately, they disabled that. You can't do that anymore. So if you want to communicate on there, you've got to reply. You got to just reply to the tweets at DrivingMaul on there, obviously. Also, you can catch us as a podcast and listen to the recording afterwards. Just search for New Zealand Sport Radio on your favourite pod catcher. Onto the old Fijian Drua, who have named another, I think it's 7 players today, which takes them now up to 34 players. As I've said, there's still a handful to come. I think they'll be rounding out at 38. So another 4 to come over the next week or so. Now, the really cool thing for them is that they have already started training over in Fiji due to different travel restrictions, and they don't have to quarantine going into Queensland. They've also managed to put back their travel there by a couple of weeks, so which is obviously helps as the players don't have to sit in hotel rooms, and also means they have more time with their families before heading over to there, which is great on that one. So let's just run through those players. I've got Masuluma Dololokoto, who is one of is a flying Fijian. So obviously is an international grade hooker. So great to see he's been named. Also with Chudraki, Samu Vodre, who is come through the local scene, but also has played over for the Free Jacks in Major League Rugby as a fly half come fullback as well. Teti Tela also can play fly half or inside centre, and again an international, but has also been running around in Super Rugby for the Reds and also playing in Queensland. Villavi Miramira, who is a local boy out of Fiji, so fantastic to see him come in the locks point of view. Then we've got a player, another hooker, Zarail Togitama, who has come through counties Manukau. Villame Rarasi, again, also through counties Manukau. I think counties Manukau is going to be a source of a lot of players for both the Fijian Drua and also Moana Pasifika. Talk about Moana Pasifika, they've gone down to the Hawke's Bay and taken a lot of players from there, which has been interesting on that one. And then finally, Hareti Hetet is also been playing for Waikato and Bay of Plenty, as well as playing for the New Zealand Maori side, or the Maori All Blacks. So he's also come in, but is also a capped Fijian international. So look, quite a lot of Fijian internationals, which is exactly what we're expected to see. We didn't expect to necessarily be their first choice players, but and as we mentioned, I think it might have been Friday that we also talked about. Or was it Sunday? Actually, sorry, it's Sunday, wasn't it? About how the news had come out that about I think 10 to 15 players had been sort of interested but there was no commitment, so they ended up going to Europe. Now, whether they would have stayed and played for the Fijian Drua or the Moana Pasifika on the Super Rugby salaries, or whether they would have stayed in Europe for the European salaries, we'll have to wait and see. And as we saw at the weekend, when we looked at the 10 highest paid players in World Rugby, that only 2 of them, Hooper and Bowden Barrett, were based in Super Rugby, and both of those had their earnings boosted by sabbaticals to Japan. So look, there's obviously a big monetary difference between those. So great to see the Fijian Drua still going through their naming their players and getting themselves pretty much up to a full squad there, which shows you that that's all progressing kind of nicely on that one. I already had a couple of comments in the live chat around the USA game. So let's get to those then. The reviewer says USA gets very few Tier 1 games outside the World Cup, especially compared to Japan. So that's part of the problem. Yes, and also having those Tier 1 games outside the window really hasn't helped with this one in particular. When they were going to lose to the All Blacks, even if they had their full strength team. Let's be honest with that one. Look, I do think that the USA does pretty well out of Tier 1 games for a Tier 2 country. Quite often they'll get a Scotland or an Italy travelling through for a game during the mid-year window as they travel down on the way to Argentina, being added onto that. It'd be interesting to. I'm not actually going to look at the stats reviewer, but maybe I will do to see to look at how many Tier 1 games both the USA and Japan have had recently. Now, clearly, Japan with the run-up to the Rugby World Cup, there were various teams definitely having extra games with them in the run-up to the 2019. And World Rugby was also obviously part of that to try and make sure they were as competitive as possible for their home Rugby World Cup. If the USA does win the rights to host the Rugby World Cup, we could see something similar happen to them. And joining me, wasn't it, is Con. Hi, how are you doing, sir?
Good. Just thought I'd keep you company until the main man comes along.
Well, he has been on and dropped off, so I was in the middle of speaking, so I didn't bring him in onto screen. But there we go. So I don't know what happened there, but he was there momentarily in the green room backstage, but yeah, he's not there now. Just also rounding off on this one, Simon Hughes, the ridiculous Major League Rugby. Now, I'm not quite sure what about the respect to Major League Rugby has been going on. I've not seen the comments on that one. But look, Major League Rugby is in its infancy. Not only that, but also COVID has got in the way of things. So yes, look, it does need time to grow. It will be it will take time, but it will. But over time, it will become a significant league in the rugby world. And here he is.
Yeah.
How are you doing, sir? Oh, sorry.
Very well, thank you. My apologies. Being an environmentalist takes time, so just cleaning up some of the wash in the estuary. So glad to be on the show, and hope everyone is well, and hope everyone is safe.
Yeah, cool.
Absolutely.
Good speaker set you got there, Bo. It looks like it could be quite loud if you're not careful, though. Cheapest.
That's why it's got the ear defenders on.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
They're just earplugs.
It's about quality. It's old school cut copper wire. This thing at the back was assembled in 1967 in Wahi, where Paul currently lives. Because back then there was trade restrictions between Japan and New Zealand, so you could only bring parts in and assemble it. But I don't crank it up too much. I just use it for my old LPs.
It's cool.
The old Frank Sinatra and those sort of people.
On your
assembly of things, by the way, folks. If you like to assemble things, then have a check out at DrivingMaul on Twitter and have a look at the wooden stables that I've got for sale on TradeMe. So just search for wooden stables for she'll like horses. It's a toy one that you can assemble, and that's up for sale. So have a look for that, please, folks, as that's my new venture to try and feed myself, since you guys won't pay for me to talk about rugby too much. But talking about paying for me to talk about rugby, I've had a chat with the Attacking Scrum podcast, through a Welsh podcast, and that is something that will be coming out tomorrow for a full year for your ears only, previewing getting a Welsh view ahead of this game against the All Blacks. Obviously, we'll be talking tonight, getting an All Blacks view ahead of that game as well. So Simon's saying that a lot of people are saying that Major League Rugby isn't helping the USA Rugby to improve. Boys, what are your any kind of thoughts on that one?
I think, sorry, do you say boys or boa? I think you said boa,
Boys.
didn't you?
No, I said boys.
Oh, there we go. Okay, good. Look, I think it absolutely will. Depth improves teams. Occasionally it can, a country without depth can put together a really good side. Australia occasionally shows that. And what I remember that is they punch well above their weight considering some of the depth they have. But it will absolutely improve USA. And if you have a look at it, a lot of the players in each of the Major League Rugby teams are American. It's not just a bunch of expats and everything like that. I know there are quite a few, and a lot of the marquee players are expats, but there are a lot of Americans. One comment I wanted to make on one of your previous callers is, one of the things, I know there's a lot of noise about how this game is a negative, and I understand why, but I think part of this may not be that the USA has gotten worse. I think New Zealand rugby lately has gotten a lot better at putting big scores on teams that aren't great. And it's just an unfortunate reality of, I understand that Tonga wasn't the best Tongan team, but I don't suspect an Australian team and Australian teams in the past have put together some massive scores, or an English team or a Welsh team or an Irish team. If Ireland got to play them, I don't think they would have put 100 on them. So yes, may not have been the best look, and I'm sure it didn't inspire a lot of players, but I don't necessarily think it's that they're getting a lot worse. I think the style that the All Blacks are playing lately, just with the offloading and the passing out wide, was just a bad combination for the American team. The original Bo, what do you think about Paul's original query about the Major League Rugby?
Look, I'll start by agreeing with the last bit what you said. I think the All Blacks, and particularly New Zealand high performance teams, are, they're exceptional, and it was a gross mismatch. It was like trying to run a country horse against a Group 1 multiple winner, and you know what the outcome was. It was just a case of how much the margin of victory is going to be. We knew it was going to be daylight, but no one I certainly didn't expect 100 points. I would have expected maybe 8 to 10 scores, i.e. 8 to 10 tries, 60 to 70 point margin. But boy, 59 at half time, that was quite pulverizing. It's like throwing an egg and a frog into a blender and just kind of let it run. It was that bad, because all it looked was the USA looked really good running backwards, and you could clearly see their numbers on their white jerseys. So, yeah, I think that's one side of it. As far as MLR goes, what Rugby USA really need to do is they need to have a very clear high-performance strategy and look to align what the MLR franchises are doing with their test squad. By that, I mean, put some regulations around it, look at getting some mandatory minutes, much like what NZR are doing with their players and the Super Rugby squads. And of course, there's good alignment between the Super Rugby coaches and the All Blacks coaches. So there's good synchronization with what their desired outcomes are. So if USA put some structure and processes in place where they can monitor and develop the form line and skills and experiences of some of their players, sure. I think the USA will be well on its way to improving. Will they be world beaters? That I don't know. It might take a couple of decades. I mean, rewind 25 years, if you recall, Japan playing against the All Blacks in the 1995 World Cup. All Blacks pretty much ran as a second-string side and racked up 145 points. Fast forward 25 years, you can see where Japanese rugby is now. So there are plenty of blueprints the Americans can learn from. It's just coming up with a high-performance strategy which is consistent so that the players they earmark and talent pool can progress, and so that they could create cycles of 4 to 8 year quality talent pools.
Absolutely. I think just on your mention of Japan, what was the score in NZ Japan 2018? It was a pretty big score, wasn't it? And I think the All Blacks played pretty poorly, and that was against a team. I think we might have we score 60 points. This was the pretty experimental All Black side. Let's say it was 50. I think it was somewhere around there. I mean, Japan would have thrown all the players they had at that game because teams love to play the All Blacks, and that's why one of the reasons why the USA were keen to do it. They love to play them. It's like New Zealand playing Brazil in football. We'd love to play them. Love to play USA in basketball, of course. And Japan, they did get a bit of a shellacking against us, but it doesn't take away from what they've done and what they did the next year. They beat Scotland and Ireland in the World Cup. Some of it's timing, some of it's some of it is probably 60. Oh, yeah. To be fair to the reviewer, that's a good point. But it is still 69 points. It's a big score. So but agree with you, Boa. They do need a bit more strategy. One thing that one of you guys might know a bit more than me about is a year or so ago, Glendale pulled out of MLR because they didn't believe that it was aligning with the national team's with the Eagles' best interest. And I don't really know why. There's very little information on it. It was a very unusual decision. Do you guys know anything about that, and whether there was any kind of, I guess, truth to what they were saying?
I'll just step in here for a second. I do know a little bit because I've got a few players I've been involved in the past who now have a lot to do with MLR, as well as some coaches. It was, I think Rugby USA had a very turbulent time. In fact, they went to liquidation, and there was a lot of things which happened in the background. So partly it was a bit political, but one side of the equation, particularly from coaching and managing high performance players, it was a case of every franchise and every club wanting to look after themselves, which is understandable. However, there was, again, no clear-cut strategy between the clubs, i.e. the franchises in the MLR, and the high-performance team, which is the USA Eagles. So I think because there's this disjoint, and that is something which is being discussed currently, and I have to give credit to the Eagles, this side, which got absolutely railroaded by the All Blacks, was a side picked completely out of form from the MLR. So again, it's a case of identifying who these players are from the MLR clubs, giving them a good timeline they can work with, having clarity on how they are going to develop and fast track them and see what these desired outcomes. I'm yet to see any of that. Let's hope that they do put some structure in place. We just have to wait and see, and hopefully, for the good of world rugby, USA can really step up, and we will have another team who can hopefully ruffle a few feathers.
Now, look, Glendale, there was, as you say, there was some politics involved. They didn't necessarily agree with how the direction Major League Rugby was going, and so they pulled out of that, and USA Rugby has gone and set up camp in Glendale, which is interesting, and running various camps and things out of there. So Glendale will still have a rugby presence in that one. Simon's saying there's a doco on ESPN about it. You might also watch it on Sky Sports. The other side of things is, look, until about 2 years, probably about 3 years ago now, the USA had never fielded or never been able to select an entire squad of professional athletes, and Major League Rugby has allowed that to happen. So the And I think we saw that in that second half. I guess one of the things that you kind of historically expect is for a lot of tries in the last quarter. We didn't particularly see that this time. In fact, the All Blacks scored more tries in the first half than the second half, which shows you that the American players were playing probably at a similar level all the way through, but the drive, but also when the subs came on, the All Blacks just didn't manage to keep their shape as well. Was probably what we saw. So I think we are seeing. So the level of fitness should be better. Now I know a couple of years ago Gary Gold was helping and his team were helping each of the Major League Rugby teams by doing analysis of the games, the Major League Rugby games, and giving them kind of what they saw out of those games. Now, whether that's still going on, I don't know. And I think one of the big differences you've got between one of the things that we mentioned during the 5 p.m. Lockdown Beers show was that Major League Rugby is one of the few leagues in the world that isn't funded through international rugby payouts from the Central Union, right? Which is what Super Rugby is, Premiership Rugby is, Top 14, the URC. They're all funded through basically handouts from the unions. The income that they generate through international. So there isn't that financial control of Major League Rugby by the union that you have got of Super Rugby by the Super Rugby franchises by New Zealand Rugby, for example. So they are independent. They can. I mean, for example, in New Zealand, the head coach and one other coach of each Super Rugby franchise is paid for by New Zealand Rugby. That's something that comes. They're not even paid. Their pay comes straight from New Zealand Rugby, not from the Super Rugby franchise. So you kind of do what your paymaster tells you, right? That doesn't happen over there in the States. So they are independent. They don't have to follow a set formula that Gary Gold wants them to. But my understanding is he does have a working relationship with each of the teams. It's going to be better and worse depending on which coach it is. Clearly, and that's just human nature. But my understanding is he does have a working relationship with them. And unlike when, who was the American rugby coach, head of the South African guy who's now with England, or actually was with England, just left England. I've gone blank. Mitchell? No. So he's not South African. He's
John
Kiwi.
Mitchell.
John Mitchell. Yeah, and John Mitchell. Sorry, yeah, John Mitchell was
He did coach in South Africa as well, didn't he?
He did. That's right. Sorry about that. But he didn't live in the USA, for example. Whereas at least Gary Gold has moved to the USA, lives there full time, and part of that one. So yes, as Simon said, yeah, John Mitchell, not South Africans. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yes, my error.
It would be great if they were able to pull. I mean, they're doing what everyone's probably, they've got the competition in place. It's working, and so it's on the right track. And how big would it be to have effectively, in the last, I would say, I don't know, maybe 2003. I know 2007 was when it happened, but we went from having. There's always been the pools of death, but there weren't really more than 8 teams that could realistically make it to the semi-finals of a World Cup. And then Argentina kind of shocked everyone and did very well in 2007. And now every World Cup, no one would be surprised if they made it to the semi-finals. And now in 2019, we now have Japan, who no one would be, well, it would be a surprise, but it's certainly a lot more. People would be... the TAB would be offering not as significant pre the 2023 World Cup. They'll be offering pretty high odds, but not as significant as before 2019 for Japan to get to the semi-final. At the moment, the USA isn't in the picture for that. They don't tend to do well in World Cups, unfortunately, but it would be great to no longer have a pool of death, but have all the pools that have 3 teams that are very strong contenders for getting out of the pool. At the moment, we've got 2 pools out of 4 that have 3 teams that are, you just don't know, and that's the one that includes Argentina and Japan. Now, Fiji, obviously, very, very, that they can beat anyone in the, on a good World Cup. But I think, it's that 4th pool as well that would be it would be great to have USA there as a true contender to go deep.
Yeah, look, it's going to be interesting, isn't it, with Fiji and Drua? Are we going to see Fiji step up and become actually, you say, a proper quarterfinal contender? Yeah, we'll see. On that one, Simon Hughes says that the top 14 is quite sustainable by itself. No, I don't think so. I think the French Rugby Union pays handsomely for access to players, whilst the owners all spend lots of cash, all those teams lose money. A bit like the Gallagher Premiership. I mean, when Bouchelad says that as only a multi-millionaire, he can't compete with the billionaires owners in the top 14, that tells you that there's serious it needs serious outside investment. They're not self-sustaining by any stretch of the imagination. On that one,
which is interesting, Paul. Just question for you. They're obviously paying a bit of money to bring players like Manonu and such in. How are they being funded? Considering it's fair to say they're not bringing in a huge amount from door sales. The crowds are quite small. To be fair, no, it's impressive for what they're doing, but we're not talking 40,000 people, and I imagine the TV rights are pretty limited. They were last year they were streaming on I think just on Facebook and that kind of thing for some of it, and local TV. I think some of the teams had sort of like a local broadcaster, which probably wasn't paying much to get that on. So where is the funds coming from to bring a Manonu over?
Okay, so each of the teams in Major League Rugby have a salary cap of $500,000 a year. Reportedly, Adam Ashley Cooper and Matt Gitto, who you'd expect to be two of the higher paid players or highest paid players over there, were on $45,000 for their season.
Okay, gotcha. So it's a lifestyle.
There's no big money in MLR. Let me reiterate that most of these guys are playing because they love the game that much. They just have to play rugby until they're 65, or financially, they just have to play rugby to make a living.
Yeah, can't get the contract.
One or the other.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's cool. Well, that's because they just do seem to be pulling more and more, I guess, players that you would think Manonu could probably get a decent Japanese contract, although maybe I'm overstating his. Or earn the similar money in a local team, but maybe it's lifestyle as well.
Now, based on what's happening in Japan currently, it's going to be extremely difficult for ex-All Blacks who are well past their use-by date to actually get a gig. The reality is, the Japan league it's a very, very competitive league, and everyone's out there to win, and there's big bucks on offer for the right profile players. So that's why you don't see players who are former All Blacks who won a World Cup maybe 2 World Cups ago, where you're seeing actually guys who are current All Blacks who are getting sabbaticals, and some of the All Blacks who just retired. So I think very difficult to it's unfair to compare what's happening in Japan with MLR. MLR, in my opinion, is not the greatest of standards, but it's on its way up there. And if anyone is having ideas of becoming a billionaire rugby player playing in the MLR, sadly that's not going to happen, not anytime soon.
No, but if we go back 5-10 years to Japan, they were hiring the kind of players that Major League Rugby is now hiring, right? But they've progressed, and now they've got current Springboks. You've got players actually. Corey Hill, who was being talked about as being the next, as being potentially a Wales captain at some point. He's gone mid-career over to Japan. Kouris went again. He was definitely not at the end of his career. He ended his England career early to go to Japan. So I mean, look, that will happen to Major League Rugby in a few years. Now there are other players who go over. Some of them go over there for the lifestyle. I mean, players like say the Beast. I think he went over there to just what is it like to live in the States and get paid to do it while you're out there. And then you've got other players who have gone over who see it as more of a long-term thing, that So if you look at someone like, I've gone blank, the ex-England fullback who is with the New York team. Anyway, he's gone over there and he's on to his second or third season now. But you can see that his long-term goal will be to become a coach in the USA and stay on like that. So there are players who are seeing it as okay, where will Major League Rugby be in 10 years' time? If I get in now, I'll be on the Megabucks in 10 years' time. Or what other rugby-related businesses can I get involved in while I'm over there? Because the market is way bigger. I can have I don't have to dominate the market. I can just get my 1% slice. But because the pie is so big, that makes me very rich. So there's a number of players. Serevi has been over there for a long time in Seattle, running his thing. Ben Foden, thank you very much, Simon, for the name I couldn't remember. So there are those players who are seeing it as a long-term business opportunity for them as well. So it's a bit of a mixture as to the kind of players who are heading over there. We've lost Con. He did say we might have to drop off. So thank you, Con, for joining us. Not surprised that he's had to disappear. So Boa, should we look forward to next weekend then?
Yeah, well, I think look, it's probably not going to be as bad as what the Eagles had to endure, but I can't see any other storyline adjust itself because Wales are missing the number of their first choice guys who are involved in the Premiership. But even if the first choice guys were there, I think chance it's long odds for them to create any sort of upset. And it'll be interesting to see what sort of side the All Blacks put out and what type of performance they come up with, because Ian Foster did sound a bit grumpy, even though 100 points were scored. He wasn't. One of the comments he made was it was far from perfect, which is correct. It's quite interesting, isn't it? You're far from perfect and you still rack up 100 points. So this is the thing. Whenever the All Blacks play, unless they win by 500 points and score a try every time they touch the ball, forgetting that it's a test match, they'll always cop some criticism. So I'm looking forward to it. I would have loved to have seen Wales come out with the full complement and see if they can breathe some burst fire from the Dragon. But it's not looking good for them. An inevitable car crash awaits.
Well, look, if we go, as you say, if we look back at the just very quickly on that comment by Hansen on the USA game. Look, that first half, there were probably 2 errors, which led to 2 tries by the USA. Other than that, I think he would have been very happy with the first half. I think it's more the second half that he's grumpy about, in the fact that they didn't manage to continue that form all the way through the full 80. So I think that was, I've got to say, that first half was very good by the All Blacks, which is why they racked up so many points. So looking forward to this weekend, though, and I guess from a squad point of view, what do you think he's going to do? I also did a piece. I recorded a piece for Jed on his show, the Attacking Scrum podcast. He's got a special coming out on Thursday that'll include the chat we had, the other side of the chat we had with him hosting rather than me hosting. But one of the comments I made was we could see as many as 17 changes between the USA game and this game. Essentially, if it wasn't a player coming back from injury, i.e. Dane Coles, Sam Whitelock, Sam Cane, except he's ruled himself out, Richard Mwanga, and then Bowden Barrett and David McKenzie. Apart from those 6, and as I say, Sam Cane's already ruled himself out. So apart from 5, I think the other 18 probably don't even make the don't even make the team. Well, maybe 2 of the props have to, because we've only got 6 props. But apart from that, I think pretty much everyone else could be having a weekend off.
Look, there is that strong possibility, but my line of thinking, and it's obviously my opinion, is that I would actually look for a bit of continuity, particularly with combinations, because I was actually very impressed with Christie starting at halfback. He played very well with Richard Moanga, particularly his pass, and it was actually forcing Moanga to hit the gap at speed, and that's what actually, yes, it was the Eagles, but you could see that first tackle was being broken at will. So some really positive signs there. And also, with some of the guys like Coles, and also Sam Whitelock, they need the minutes. They absolutely need the minutes. So it's a real fine balancing act. Are we going to make wholesale changes, as you rightly said, up to 19 changes, or are we going to mix and match so that we can get some continuity, particularly in those key combinations in the halves? But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. And I think game plan wise, we saw Will Jordan play a pivotal role in attack, where he was a receiver, a number of try assists. He could have easily scored 2 hat tricks in that game. So are they going to utilize similar sort of tactics, or are they going to change it slightly? Are we going to see a little bit more kicking involved? So I think it's going to be a little bit more the same, but there will be a few changes coming in purely to make sure that the wider squad gets selection and gets some crucial minutes so that they can build up some run-on form for the weeks ahead.
I have got to disagree with you. I think we are going to see 17, 18 changes in this one. I think anyone who started in this game pretty much doesn't play in the next game. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that we have Cody Taylor comes back with Samasoni off the bench, for example, to replace both hookers. As far as props go, I'd expect to see Joe Moody come back, and I've gone blank. Is it Offer on the other side or Carl?
Big Offer. Offer Tunga.
Big Offer. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Moody and Offer with Carl coming off the bench, and then we would have to have gone blank as to so one of the props from. Oh, actually, Lualala. Sorry, no. I'd expect to see Moody and Lualala actually start. Then with Offer and Carl coming off the bench.
Carl T. Mm-hmm.
In the engine room, Sam Whitelock keeps his place with Frederick Talik, with Va'ai coming off the bench again. Moving on to the bench, so he's one of the few players there because we've only got 4 locks in the squad. As far as loose forwards go, Arnie Surveyor definitely comes back in. And then I guess the question then, I was expecting Sam Kane to start, but obviously he's ruled himself out. So my guess is that we'd have Papulehi would keep the 7 jersey, and that Akira Ioane comes back onto the 6 jersey. And then either Jacobson or probably Blackadder actually keeps gets Blackadder onto the bench. So again, that's just one player there keeping it. I expect it to be Brad Weber to start, and I think Finley Christie has played himself ahead of TJ, so I expect him to take the bench spot. Richie Moanga then with Havili and Anton Leonard-Brown in the centres. You're looking at Rico Ioane on one wing, Sifa Reese on the other wing, Geordie Barrett at fullback, with Bowden Barrett and potentially Will Jordan or Quintapaya in that 23 jersey. I think it's back to full. I think you go first choice team against Wales.
Oh, well, I did say in the precursor to this that we are going to see a car crash. Well, I'm going to actually upgrade that now to a train crash. It's going to be a train wreck. Well, look, it would be. Yeah, look, I mean, me personally, I just want to see some of the fringe players get some game time, because this tour really serves that purpose. However, the flip side of it is, if the All Blacks are really ruthless, and I mean Dr. No, James Bond type ruthless. Remember Dr. No and Sean Connery? He had the iron hand. He just takes the glass pitcher and just crushes it. If the All Blacks decide to do that, we might get a glimpse of what we're actually looking for as far as finishing and also tactical execution and being merciless on how we dispatch sides. All I have to say is good luck to Wales. Good luck to my friend Dwayne Pivak. He's a great coach, by the way. And it's going to be it's going to be a train crash. So I like the way you're thinking, Paul. And that's a full strength side, all bar Aaron Smith and halfback.
And potentially Jack Goodhue. I mean, we still don't know who the who the 12 really is. Frizzell, Frizzell could be on the bench instead of Blackadder. That's going to come down to how fit he is. He wasn't available last weekend because he wasn't fit, so we don't know whether he'll be available for this one. I guess the only question is, does sentiment come into it? Do you start Bodie ahead of Richard Moana because it's his 100th cap?
No, not at all. I mean, if you're going to go with a full strength side, we go to crush the opposition. Just get the fire hose and put the fire out of the Welsh Dragon, and then just rip it apart like a little ragdoll. So if that is the logic on selection, if that's what they're looking for, the form line criteria, we got to start with our best 15 and the best available 8 on the bench. So I think sentiment's not going to play any part. You start with your best 23, and I think Foster will be looking for a near perfect game of execution. Not so much a scoreline, but making sure that all the set plays, they retain the ruck recycle, make sure that they don't lose shape and play 80 minutes of ruthless rugby. And if that's the case, don't be surprised if we see a similar scoreline to what we saw last weekend.
Well, I don't think we'll see 3 figures. Whatever happens. Nocturnal Right says, do we save Richard Moana for the next game? Because no, we don't, because Ireland is the next game, and I think we go straight back to the USA lineup against Italy. So it goes USA, Wales, Italy, Ireland, France. So I think we have obviously the USA team, or the basically the reserves, or the squad players. We go first choice against Wales. We roll back out effectively the very similar to the USA team, but again, Rich Moana would come off and Beauden Barrett would start the Italy game, or Damien McKenzie at 10, and then you have first choice against Ireland and France. After that is how I would play it. I wouldn't save anybody for Wales. As I say, I think it should be a third. We treat them. They are the Six Nations champions, right? Now, was it a jam slam because of various red cards and in fact they didn't get the grand slam, did they? But as on the attacking scrum they call it. They joke about the jam slam because 2 of their games against Ireland and Scotland there were red cards. They lost the last game against France, but still won the Six Nations. So look, we are talking about arguably the champions of Europe. Are they the strongest team in Europe? I don't think so, and definitely not without players who are missing. So Josh said, are the Northern Hemisphere clubs disallowing release of any Welsh players? They are. So the players that play in the Gallagher Premiership basically are not available. There are no Welsh players currently playing in France, which basically means that their first and second choice fly halves from last year are unavailable. And there's one other player. Lewis Rees-Summit on the wing. There's a couple of other fringe players, but those are the 3 main ones. So Bigger and Sheedy. Arguably, Gareth Anscombe is now their second choice anyway, ahead of Sheedy, but having come back from injury. But those are the kind of those. So it's not a. Stuff had an article saying 21 players were missing. Yes, there are players like Josh. There are British and Irish Lions like Josh Navidi, like Tipperick, who are unavailable to injury. But there aren't that many players over in England that they're missing in reality.
I have to say, just jumping on what Nocturno was saying. Yeah, I mean, this tour is pretty much it's that AB rhyme, isn't it? It's tailor made, so we could bring in a experimental side. We can then bring our top side and again go back, so we can manage the minutes. So it's in that sense, it's really good, particularly building up the Ireland game and then the Grand Slam finish with France. But just make a note with this whole Welsh thing. I get that they're missing all that top players, but the reality is, even if these top guys were in, the form line which the All Blacks bring in, I can't see it would have made any difference whatsoever. Sure, the Welsh would have been in the game for a while, but come on, let's not kid reality here. We know what's coming. It's just a case of, if the All Blacks decide to play rugby, which they hold in excellence, it's gonna be a runaway victory anyway. So it would have been nice to see a full strength Six Nations or the European champions. But after this Saturday, with what's going to happen, Wales won't have a hole to hide in. So I wish them luck. And on that note, I would like to say, Paul, I would love to see your sentiments on the selection sheet. We pick a full strength side and actually show what we're actually capable of.
Sorry, I think Wales with a full strength team would narrow the margin. I think that would make a slight difference. But Wales have not beaten the All Blacks since 1953, which was a 13-8 win in Cardiff for them. So look, it's been a very, very long time between drinks. This weekend does not line up as being the weekend where that'll change. It will change at some point, folks. As we saw, Ireland beat New Zealand after 100 years of not winning. So it will happen at some point. Don't kid ourselves. But yeah, as you say, the form lines and the selections criteria for this weekend suggests that this isn't the weekend that it's going to change, folks. Now, why is this game happening? Well, this game and the USA game are happening because New Zealand Rugby has lost a bunch of cash, folks, and so is Welsh Rugby. Right? let's be honest about this one. Will Wales put up more points than the USA? Ooh, now they'll concede less points, but whether they'll score more is an interesting one. Will they score more than 14 points? I don't know, to be honest. Wales could be kept down to that kind of level, that kind of number, and I think that's what Hansen will want to see. He'll want to see.
Just sort of interjecting that. Look, if we do name a full strength side, and if we do hit our straps, we're in for a big afternoon, and Wales might not even get a shout. So let's not rule that possibility out as well, because the All Blacks are one of those teams. They want to attack from everywhere and score on every given opportunity, and all it takes is a quarter of rugby, like what happened in that Tongan game, where every single time they were either receiving from a restart and they just went dotted down. Now, don't rule that possibility out this Saturday. Yes, Wales in some form or shape are a bigger step up than the USA Eagles, but if the All Blacks put out their best side, I don't know, maybe USA might have more points than this Welsh side. So it's going to be a very intriguing observation to be found out.
Hey, let's just look over the last few games. So obviously the Mets in the third place playoff at the Rugby World Cup, and that finished 40-17. So obviously not a lot of points there for Wales. They played then back in 2017. It was 33-18 over in Cardiff. And then previous to that, obviously, was the tour over here, where the scores were 39-21, 36-22, 46-6. So, look, it's looking at those. We are looking at I said 21 points when I was talking with the attacking scrum, but we're looking for a 20 to 30 point victory. Actually, without those extra players, maybe a 30 to 40 point victory is what I expect, really.
I'm actually, if it's a full strength side, I'm saying 51 plus, easy. I think this All Black side, with the attacking weapons they have, provided that the accuracy is on point, anything is possible. So I'm very bullish about it. I'll be even more bullish on Thursday if they do name a full strength side. I will actually upgrade 51 plus to 61 plus.
Now, I would like to point out that Bell was very bullish last year before the All Blacks lost to Australia 22-24, and before the All Blacks lost to Argentina 15-25. So sometimes it works, like when obviously they beat Argentina 38-0 in the following game, and they obviously beat the Argentina 39-0 this year. Sometimes it works when Bell says he's bullish. Sometimes, not very often, admittedly, because the All Blacks normally win, but sometimes it doesn't.
Most times, I would say a strike rate of about 90%, and I think particularly with NPC results in the last few weeks, it speaks.
Oh no. Okay, no. I'm very much differentiating here between your NPC predictions, which I think you have a much more even view of both teams, and your international predictions, where I believe you're slightly a slight bias comes in. If I'm being polite, I'd say you're one-eyed in some of those views. To be honest, on the scale of the victories, more so than anything else.
Yes, there is. Of course, there is what you call a try-scoring bias, because you look at averages. Statistically looking at things. The only thing I have to say is that particular loss to Australia, I did tip under 7-point victory. The reason is it was Perth. Statistically, we have a very peculiar situation. Whenever the All Blacks
play, it wasn't. That loss to Australia was Brisbane last year.
So in the Gold Coast or at Perth, we have this statistical anomaly where the All Blacks kind of go off the boil. The absolute anomaly was that loss to the Argentina Pumas. I don't think anyone would, except of course the Pumas themselves, who believed that it was possible. True. Anyone would have picked that. However, on the return leg, we saw what happened. So it's sort of swings and roundabouts. But as far as consistency goes, I think there's no disputing the All Blacks, as far as all sport globally, one of the most consistent teams to consistently put big victory margins.
Yep, no, absolutely, totally agree. The kind of the topics I wanted to talk about, but since we've got a little time left, I would just like to get your take on the Moana Pasifika squad building that they've been doing. What are your thoughts on that one? Do you like what you're seeing there, or do you have some concerns?
Yeah, look, some selections, yes, really good selections. Some curious selections, and some selections I think they probably need a bit more depth in, particularly in the locking department. Now, the reason I say this is because if you look at some of the other franchises, they're up against a real quality experience, particularly with the test caps and particularly the New Zealand franchises, where all the top All Blacks play. One thing I can stress, which Moana Pasifika will need, is more preparation time, much like what the Fijian Drua are proposing, because again, it's time together, making sure the combinations are given enough thought, and they're given enough time to do their thing on the training field. So look, I don't want to sound overly negative, because this whole Moana Pasifika thing is it's a new adventure. I hope that these players really step up, but keep in mind, when you're playing Super Rugby at the intensity you're supposed to, it takes a toll, more so mentally. So sort of happy. I'm kind of 50-50. I've got one foot saying, yeah, look, really some really positive stuff, some really good selections, and they've mastered this selection process where they announce players, they pick 2 players a day, and they kind of drip feed everyone, which is really good. But on the other hand, I look at some of the players, they've got good form at club level and probably cut it at provincial level, but again, some of the top franchises, part of me says that they will struggle a little bit.
Yeah, so I just put, for those of you watching rather than listening, I just put the selections so far up there. So so far we've not had a single hooker named, and we've only had one prop. So clearly we need to see what the front row is going to look like. We've had those 3 locks mentioned there, all of which one of which has got some. Actually, I don't think any of them got Super Rugby experience at all. So you say, a very green locking selections so far. Loose forwards looking good. In the halves looking okay. Especially with who we think is going to be the other scrum halves available to them. So I think it's going to be okay. And I think in the backs we're seeing something that's looking like it could work, and definitely combinations there with Inari, McClutchy, Tuala, Vidinai there, who have all play for the Hawke's Bay. So clearly there are some combinations there for them in that one.
There's some good connections coming out of Hawke's Bay, and I have to say, the picking of Christian Lealiafano, very, very good selection. I think that experience he has, particularly playing at the highest level, he's done some great stuff with the Brumbies. And also, personal note, he's a man who actually beat leukemia, and to come back and play at this level, that takes some courage, and that actually takes a lot of mental focus and skills in being able to transition back and come back into the game. And also Lincoln McClutchy, great selection there. So there's potential, it certainly is. It's a diamond in the rough, but you have to understand, at this intensity, first class level, you're playing some of the New Zealand sides, you have to be on your A game, and experience will count a lot.
Plus also, they're going to need a front five to have a platform at set piece. So we have to wait and see what we get there. Without a platform at set piece, you're always going to struggle. Let's finish off on Josh's question here then. Is the whelming depth in the All Blacks beneficial or a hindrance to team chemistry? Now, from my point of view, I think the way that the All Blacks coaches select their players, because of the consistency of selection, that's basically there's a spine that is always selected, and then they'll change players around it. And hence, that's why I don't think it is a hindrance to team chemistry. But it does require a certain amount of discipline by the selection criteria to make sure that you do have that core, and that you, at the end of each Rugby World Cup cycle, what they'll do after Rugby World Cup is go, which players are not going to make it to Rugby World Cup, which players are. And the players that are effectively are assured selection unless they get injured. And that allows them, which will be about a half the squad, which means you bring in a half fresh new squad, but it's always built around half of the squad who knows each other already, and that's how you don't lose the team chemistry. That's how it looks at from the outside. Boa, you have a bit more as a coach developer and talking to a lot of coaches. Is that kind of what you see?
I would disagree with you, Paul, and I'll tell you why. Because over the last 2 to 3 years, NZR High Performance have actually put a lot of thought into this particular area, where, like you said, the spine, it's what we call the nucleus of high performance. So if you take the analogy of an atom, you have your nucleus, the neutrons and the protons in the middle. So those are your key players, and then you have the electrons running around. And also contractually, in the high performance contracts which these All Blacks have signed, which correlates to their Super Rugby contracts, there are a certain amount of managed minutes. And also there is a very clear, there's some very clear KPIs, particularly on-field KPIs, specific to their position. So there's a lot of information, there's a lot of clarity on what is expected. And what this has actually led to is a very competitive environment at the high performance level. So let's say we have a squad of 36 players, and also there's an expectation that based on meeting these KPIs, you're actually never out of the picture. You're contracted, the information keeps flowing, and if you don't make that game day 23, or if you just fall to the lower rungs of the pecking order, you're actually never out of the equation. It means that you have systems and processes in place where you work on your strength and conditioning, you work with skills coaches, you work with your classroom analysis, and you're very, very much connected. So it's that whole analogy of an atom where everyone who's not part of that nucleus or just yet, they just kind of revolve around the fringes, and there's every chance for the really good electrons to come straight in and be part of the nucleus. So I take a very different view. I think it's wonderful. Yes, there will be inevitable drownings in this very wide and deep talent pool, which is as deep as the Mariana crater. But again, because there's lots of clarity and the expectations are laid out very clearly, what this actually does is it creates a high level of competitiveness, and of course it's a very healthy level of camaraderie. So we've actually evolved from the times where people were it was dog eat dog and they were trying to cut each other's throats. It's a very different sort of view at the high performance level, and all these things are actually monitored, and players aren't allowed to either be completely burnt out, or they will never allow them to fall right off the cliff, so to speak.
I think there has been one exception. I mean, there's been one drowning that I can think of over the past, decade, which has basically been Julian Surveyor. And probably the only time you've seen New Zealand Rugby invest in a player for a Rugby World Cup cycle and actually not make it. He was about the only player I can think of who was left halfway through has been dropped entirely. Maybe actually Israel Dag. I think he missed a Rugby World Cup. So maybe there's a couple there, but they are very few and far between where there is a player that is contracted that doesn't make it. It was kind of amusing seeing Israel Dag on the New Zealand Airways Rugby World Cup adverts, but not selected for the team for 2015, was it? I think.
2015.
So
and I mean, look, there's always going to be like a good example. I mean, not World Cup, but Moana Pasifika is one of them. He was. I mean, we all remember what he did against the Pumas, and Steve Hansen came out and said, Sir Steve Hansen, beg your pardon, came out and said, he's that sort of player who puts the fear of God into the opposition. But then it was just completely went off the boil, and then he's obviously moved overseas. And of course, financial pressures come into the equation as well, because these big, best example I can give you is Charles Pieta. Recently, we had a list of highest paid players on the planet, and you can see only one All Black, and that's thanks to the Sun Goliaths contract. Bowden Barrett featured in it. So if you really want to be rich, being an All Black is probably not the right thing, purely from a financial point of view.
In the short term, now, if you finish out as a 100-test All Black, there are business opportunities for you post-career that aren't available to you as a 5-test All Black have gone overseas and have earned money during a playing career. So there is a bit of a long game to it if you do stick around for 100 caps on that one.
But not everyone will get to be 100 cap All Black. It's such a select pool, and therein lies the challenge, and you have to be the cream of the crop to graduate into that class or out of that class. Beg your pardon.
True. Final question then from Nocturnal Rights. I don't have the answer to this one, but Sam Dixon, he says the loose forward and obviously Seven's background, has he left his change to move over to 15s too late? Look good on Friday night. What's your thoughts on that one?
No, not at all. And great observation, Nocturnal. In fact, we saw an old school number 8 try, didn't it? Picking straight from the base, and he just went straight through. And boy, beautiful body position. And you could see he actually attacked the line in a crouched position. He wasn't running upright, and that was the beauty of it. Has he left it too late? No, absolutely not. I think he's learned a lot from his craft in the sevens. And sometimes, players mature at a later stage, what you call the late bloomer theory, in different codes. So I think Sam's just starting to hit a little a purple patch in the 15s. But that said, he is playing in a struggling Canterbury NPC side, and that was one little brief moment. So we need to see more consistency. But in my view, purely from what I've seen as a coach and as a coach educator and developer working with players with their skills, no, absolutely not. Sam Dixon has not left it too late. And another really good example I can give you in the recent past is Samu Karevi. He went back to sevens, came back a far better player. And if you can recall, Jonah Nareki with the Otago Highlanders, same sort of thing, had his stint with the Sevens. So, in fact, what I'm seeing is players who've been playing Sevens rugby and coming back into the 15s, actually coming back better players. So, Sam Dixon.
Serevi, to be fair, Serevi went and played in Japan and only played Sevens at the Olympics. Essentially, he didn't go long-term Sevens. It was a very, very short period that he was there.
Sure.
The other thing also to be careful of here is that is Sam Dixon, and I know there's a couple of Sevens players who have joined Tasman. Are they actually long-term 15s, or is this just a stopgap because the New Zealand Sevens team are not going to the HSBC World Series stops because of travel restrictions at MIQ? So is this just about filling in, a bit like the Blackburn Sevens played Farah Palmer Cup last year, and then when the Olympics was back around, they all went back to Sevens. So is Sam actually having a real shot at 15s, or is he just playing 15s for this season, waiting for the Sevens to come back around again? We don't know. So if you don't see him getting a Super Rugby contract, that might be why, is that he's not actually making a real shot at 15s. He's just staying fit and doing something.
Look, that be that as it may, but I mean, if these guys make use of the opportunity, because that's what high performance is all about. High performance is making your best available assets, i.e. your players, and fitting them into a role. So it's about having conversations. Sam Dixon, I have to say, does have the talent to make it in the 15s. I'm not suggesting for a moment that all the Sevens converts. Now, we had example with Dan Norton, when the English Sevens was disbanded. Obviously, he needed to make a living, so he came and played Premiership, and he has since floated back into the Sevens fold. So, I hear you loud and clear, Paul, but, if the opportunity is there, I really like what I saw of Sam Dixon and his little brief moment of scoring that try, number 8, has sort of gone viral as well. So we'll wait and see with some interest.
Yep. Also the difference between is that also Dan Norton, no, incorrect, because that's Dan Norton's an English person. I was thinking of the speed stick over from the USA, the tall, skinny guy, gone blank. Anyway.
Carly Niles?
No, the other one, Perry Baker. Basically, I was trying to think. I thought you were referring to him and say, look, both Carly Niles and Perry Baker don't have high school backgrounds in rugby, whereas Dan Norton, I think, does. So that's a bit different. Anyway, thank you so much for your time, Boa. Thank you, everyone who's joined us in the live chat. Everyone who listens normally for the podcast. Please all stay safe, get vaccinated. Let's get ourselves back to normality as quickly as possible. And if you'd like to support New Zealand Sport Radio, don't forget patreon.com/NZ Sport Radio. Good night.